doll friends. This is Michael Canadas with the Carmel Doll Shop and the Grovian Doll Museum. We are at the Susan and Lou Nunez collection, and today I want to share with something that I think is a singular item in the collection. This collection is filled with many, many wondrous things, but this is the only international sales lady in the whole collection. This is something that was not created for a child, and I would imagine there were a whole fleet of these dolls that were dispatched all over the world, and this one happened to end up in the beautiful country of Australia. And when I say she was a sales lady, today you hear in business strategy the word collaboration. And if you want to survive in business, you have to learn to play well with others and collaborate. Well, Ernestine Jumeau, who was, of course, collaborated with her husband beautifully, she was in charge of the dressed doll division of the Jumeau company. There's a difference between what was going on at the factory and at her dressmaking shop. So along comes this wonderful invention, the sewing machine. And just like all inventions, at first when it came out, it was very expensive. A few people had it. And then as time went by, it got cheaper and more competition. So Ernestine Jumeau and the Jumeau company partnered up with Singer sewing machine to show you what you could do with their latest device. So here we're looking at a doll that collectors would call a portrait Jumeau. And I will tell you that she is exceptionally beautiful, beautiful spiral eyes, mauve shadow, fabulous painting, a lovely size for this example, because remember, they wanted it to get around the world, but they didn't want it to be too small that it didn't show up, that you could show their work. So if you look at this, I have said many times to people that we don't know all of the devices that were on the original sewing machines, all of the tools that they had. That has been lost in time. But this is completely machine sewn. And now that is considered less than. In the 19th century, mastering a sewing machine was not a less than thing. It was considered a great skill. So I want you to look at, just as an example, and by the way, not many French fashion dolls can I say this has all of the hallmarks of Ernestine Jumeau. Bébés you can. This is one of the few fashion dolls I look at it and think, oh, this is just totally Ernestine Jumeau. But what I want you to look at here is the tiny piping. This would be very difficult to do by hand. To get it that sharp, you're using a machine and most likely an attachment that we don't have or we don't know how to use it. She's also attached, the sleeves are piped, the cuffs are piped. Then we have all of this, these pleated flounces where we're seeing all of this was probably done by a machine that went like this, a pleater, and pleated it perfectly. You can, of course, there is a pleating thing that you crank the fabric through and it pleats. I think this was a device. So this would have been invaluable for a professional dressmaker to have one of these in-house. Then, of course, you have the ruching here. This is not such a revelation because this is done with just a running stitch and then you pull it. But if you're using a machine, you're saving a tremendous amount of time. So we've taken a second and we've flipped her around so that you can see the back. The costume at this point in time is very delicate, but it's still all with us and the design is absolutely present. This piece here is just to protect the costume from the stand. But you can see that the back is as important, if not more important, than the front. So here you have all of the ruffles or flounces that have been used, the devices that would be available on the Singer sewing machine. You have the dust ruffle. This would be really the cheapest thing in a garment, because this was meant to be put on, maybe laundered once, then thrown out and replaced. So if you had to do this by hand and then you're throwing it out, obviously on a doll that doesn't apply because she's not out walking on the streets, but this would have been something that you would have been really great to have a machine to help do that, because this would be the cheap fabric and you'd want to do it. But this underneath, this is not the cheap stuff. This is her beautiful lingerie that has all been, you can see the very, very tiny, tiny machine stitches. So to make this beautiful slip would have been, to have a machine, it would have saved so much time. Now, even though they're using the machine to create this ensemble, you still have the really, I feel, the hallmark designs of Ernestine Jumeau, like this double bow that's wrapped in such a very chic manner. And ultimately, this suit top for the bébés would have simply just been lengthened and would have become a girls' ensemble. But again, you can see the lovely detail of how they put this belt into the side seams and created a very chic look, and then also inserted some of the burgundy silk in folds to create a really chic look. So I'm going to turn her around, because although most of this would not be done with a machine, but you could use a machine to do your running stitch for your ruching in the hat. Again, I feel that this hat and the style of the hat is classic Ernestine Jumeau, and her use of color. Now we have to realize that this was burgundy, and then the flowers are red, but there's the between color that pulls it all together. So you've got the classic red, and then you've got the burgundy flowers. Now, I don't believe that this doll has ever had her clothes removed, and I don't believe that as long as Susan and Lou own her, that is never going to happen, because she is really still a sales lady. She is still helping sell Singer sewing machines and how great they are, and that I know that everybody that has one treasures it. I have the same machine that I've had since I was 12 years old, and it still works every single day, and it's a great, great company. And of course, when you can take two great companies, the king of sewing machines and the king of dolls, and put them together, this is what you end up with. And she is known all over the world as the Singer Jumeau. So I hope you enjoyed this little peek into one of the treasures of the Nunez collection. Bye-bye, doll friends.
Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button.